On top of that, a person for a webinar, right, should never, ever, ever have the option to scrub through the video, because if that's the case, then it's not a webinar. It's a sales video.
Lots of people are saying webinars are dead. Are they? Well, I can tell you that webinars that suck are dead, but webinars that convert is still in. And today in this video, I want to show you the different techniques that can make the difference between a successful one and one that absolutely bombs. We're going to take a look at different techniques and strategies that you can utilize in order to reduce the cost of acquiring a webinar registrant. I'm going to be showing you the different process as well as the strategies behind what it is that I think about every time I do a webinar, as well as take you behind the scenes to this coaching call that I recently did. And by the end of this video, you're going to be able to see exactly what you should be doing every time you go on a webinar, and what you should be doing before a webinar, and what you should be doing right after, so that you constantly improve. Let's begin.
Can you imagine a person like obediently watching this thing without scrolling back and forth, without going up and down, without scrolling through the text and judging this video, thinking if this video is going to be worth your time? Can you imagine somebody who's just glued to this screen and not scrolling, not scrubbing the video, not going back and forth, and just watching this 22 video from start to end? All right, so first person we have is Kate. Kate, welcome. Good to have you here.
I serve Christian women who want to create courses. And the result that I'm trying to get out of this ad strategy is to get people to sign up with my group program, where I kind of walk them through my system. So what do you want to know now?
Okay, great. So what do you feel you want to be able to get out of this call that you feel is your current bottleneck that will help you get to the next level?
I'm not sure my ads are working. I have some people who are clicking on it. I think the clicks are kind of good. For $73, I have 37 link clicks. I'm not sure if that's great, but it seems like it's okay. I had 13 people who registered, but nobody purchased. Now, I'm not sure if I just haven't been through enough, like if I haven't given enough time or enough money yet to find a result, or if the funnel sucks.
Let's all begin with the webinar. So is the funnel a webinar funnel? Is this the main funnel?
Yeah, I just created it myself. I didn't use any technology. I just put a video on the second page. So the first page asks them to register. The second page has I'm calling it an on-demand 22-minute webinar. So they just click on it, they get the webinar right away.
So Kate has spent approximately $70 in ad spend, and out of this $70 in ad spend, she just got 36 people landing on the page, so 36 clicks and approximately 13 registered. So the first thing that we got to do is to be able to see if the cost per registrant, right, actually makes sense. So I'm going to take out my calculator. So $70 divided by 13, that's approximately $5.38 cost for a webinar registrant. Now, is this a fair representation of what's happening? $5-ish
Yes.
Cost per webinar registrant. Okay, so $5 cost per webinar registrant. Is the audience mainly in US, or is this a worldwide audience? Based on our previous calls, that this $5 cost per webinar registrant is a pretty good solid metric. In fact, it's very probable that as you start to scale, this number would increase. So since this number works, we want to think about, well, then Kate, the next question to ask is, what's stopping you from scaling this, since a $5 cost per webinar registrant makes sense and it's not broken?
Because there's no one who's attended the webinar who's actually purchasing the course, the program.
So we know that at $5, it's very sustainable and scalable right now, right? So we don't have to fix that just yet, even though we could. Same thing for our offer, right? We can't really tell if the offer is good or not, because the truth is the sample size is too small. We have 13 people registering, and you've got 6 people on a checkout page with nobody buying, right? So Kate has spent $70. So if you take a look at this, okay, there's a few things. So for those of you who said funnel, right, congratulations, because that is the thing that we need to work on. Now, why is that the case? It is because in terms of the funnel structure is not optimal. Okay, why is the funnel structure not optimal? Here's why. Let's take a look again, right? The funnel structure is not optimal because you got this webinar, a person signing up for this free webinar. However, when it's being delivered, the truth is this isn't exactly a webinar. They opted in, and this, because there's 22 minutes in here that a person can scrub and go through. It's not a webinar. It's more like a sales video, right? Because it's not positioned as one. But of course, the person will not opt in for a sales video. So it's not fair for a person to get them to register for an on-demand webinar where the delivery is not really a webinar, because that's when they might feel that it was clickbait as well. They might have felt like, oh, it's supposed to be a webinar, but I didn't attend the webinar. It was a sales video that gave me the next step, which is fine if the conversation didn't begin that way. You see, right now you're trying to mix two different webinars altogether. You could have had this video here if this page here was not a webinar registration page. You see, if you're going to have this page, and this is where your decision has got to happen in terms of deciding which route to take. So what's essentially happening is you're paying an inflated amount to get a webinar registrant, only to get people to not watch a webinar, to watch a sales video instead, when you could have changed this into a lead magnet, decreased your cost per lead by about 4 times, because a lead magnet is an easier ask than getting somebody to commit to a webinar. Okay, so right now you have 2 options. Your first option is to change this front end over here so that it is a lead magnet, and this would be a thank you video to the lead magnet to the sales video. Or your second option is to have this page remain as is and have this page over here to be an actual real webinar where there's a thank you video, where there's no scrubbing, and they really go through training that they get value from, where at the end of it all, just like a webinar, you send them to a checkout page, which is this, without having this page over here. Now, that first 1 minute, and here's the thing, right? Like most people, if you are targeting cold audiences, and if people don't know who you are, I've talked about how cold audiences can be, extremely judgmental. And that first 1 minute is absolutely crucial because it makes a person decide straight away if the webinar and the training is for them. Now, in that first 1 minute, you went straight into teaching mode. But the problem is, and talking about like the statement of how I am makes a big difference, right? In terms of your result and how you show up. But the problem is, right now, if it's a cold audience meeting you for the very first time, we haven't yet answered the question of, well, what's in it for me, right? So think about it as, it could be the case somebody doesn't know who I am, and if they landed on my page, I'm straight away going into this teaching mode, saying, whatever, I'm enforcing my belief and my opinion on them when they don't know who I am, what it is that I've done, what it is that I stand for, how it is that I'm going to help them. And for that reason, that first 1 minute that is so crucial, I'm already losing people, because in their minds, it will be like, where is this taking me, right? So begin by following that structure, that framework of how I would do webinars, which is, how do you begin? Engage them. It would begin by telling them, acknowledging them that they're there, by telling them what's in it for them, how this thing's going to benefit them, and all those things that I talk about, that is crucial at the first few minutes. Because if you don't do that well in the first 1 minute, that's when the drop-off rates are going to be very significant. So here's another thing. If it is going to be a webinar, there must be slides to make it visual. Now, why is that? This is something that I never really understood when I first started out. Whether it's telling stories, whether it's delivering your offer or your stack, a lot of people are visual learners. And if the webinar is just a talking head with no changes and no pattern interrupt happening, then it feels like the engagement, to sustain a person's engagement, is not easy. So when you are delivering value, think about whether can you utilize, even if it's a flip chart, but I would go with slides. And the reason for that is because if it's not visual and you're not doing the stack, And let's say as part of your offer, you're having these 5 things, you can't expect a person's attention span to be so clear on what it is that you do and what it is that you offer when it's not visual. Can you imagine if I did an offer? So let's imagine as part of your offer, you have these things, right? So let's talk about your elements, okay? You have a step-by-step program. You've got the live weekly trainings. You've got the Q&A. You've got your templates. So when you are explaining your offer on your webinar over here, it's very hard for a person to visualize what it is that they're getting because it's just a talking head.
Right.
So the way you got to be able to change. Now, this would be fine if it was a sales video and you're selling a low ticket product and you're just talking head, right? But if you feel that you're going to go with the webinar, you got to really double down and go all in and present it as though it's a webinar. Before we take a look at the presentation a little bit more, was there a specific reason why you did not create slides for this?
Because I was new and this was a cold audience, I wanted to increase connection with the audience, but I do get what you're saying with the engagement and the pattern interrupt. You need something visual that moves. So I'm totally hearing that. But I didn't want to put just slides up and not having the connection.
Yes. So here's what I do, right? So notice how whenever I do webinars, I believe that there's a lot of power in this, right?
Yes.
Where it's my big face in front of the screen and I'm looking at you guys, right? Eye contact and doing
Yes.
this engagement. Now this is powerful. However, in order for a cold audience, for a presentation that runs, on demand every hour, an hour, or every 15 minutes just in time, or whatever it might be, right? It's very hard for a person to be able to understand and offer. Okay, so that's our game plan. So, okay, let's begin with this, okay, so that I can help you kind of map out and meet out this thing. So the open, okay, that's what you're gonna fix. Walk us through a few different elements that we're going to discover on this webinar. What are you going to be teaching?
I'm going to teach the difference between a traditional way of making courses, like an educational, informational type of approach versus a transformational approach. So educational approach is generally where you're taking a whole bunch of cognitive information, you're breaking it up and you're doing the chunking, but you're not really thinking a lot of times about what are the barriers that keep people from making the changes and how you can get them to maybe change their identity. Yes, you still have to have the educational, informational part, but you really want to not forget about what is it that causes people to transition and make the difference.
Okay, great. What's the next one? Okay, let me just go through the bullet points first, and then I will talk about structuring it and talking about how to connect it all together. Okay, great. Education versus transformational. What else?
That's pretty much everything I have in there.
So courses are booming, right? So we got to begin with some sort of thing that sells them the concept first before we go deeper into it. Okay, so the first thing I was missing in part of the content is showing people the power of the vehicle. Before you start teaching about the steps or the how or the techniques, think about, are people even sold by the vehicle in the first place? Okay, that's one. The next thing is, when it comes to getting deep into education versus transformational, is that what's missing in here, the thing that's going to stop your audience from buying and doing this is not because your content isn't great, right? And I can tell, Kate, that you would be a great teacher / educator. Okay, I can tell based on what you mentioned over here that this would be great content. However, it might not necessarily move the needle. So Esther mentioned it here, right? It's objections. And what we want to be able to do is, as you're teaching this, right, to not just teach for the sake of teaching, but really coming from the angle of, okay, so what's going to stop a person from wanting to do this? And you're going to realize that the reason why they don't want to do this is not because they don't believe in you or your offer or your vehicle. That's just the surface level. A much bigger objection is going to be internal. You've heard me talk about how this is the mother of all objections, which is, but who am I to do this?
Yes.
So what I would love to be able to hear, okay, then that's what we're going to work on next, is to be able to do this, guys. The best way is to first just list down constantly. Think about all of the different objections a person might have with respect to this vehicle and their own inability to execute.
Imposter syndrome is definitely a big one, and I've had to deal with it. A lot of people feel like they don't have a story that's big enough, or they feel like they're not good on camera, or they feel like I had one lady with beautiful content, but she didn't want to be on camera and she wanted to hire a narrator. But her topic was so, it required connection with people because it had to do with women who are going through difficulties with pregnancy and childbirth. I'm like, you need to be on camera. Who you are matters.
Great marketers teach because they understand that what they're teaching them is empowering the audience, because it's going to answer a objection that helps them get unstuck, that helps them move forward. So what we want to do is, we never want to enforce an opinion. We want to either be able to, number one, like what Lisa mentioned, ask the questions so that they arrive at the conclusion themselves, which is going to be way more powerful than you telling them, or illustrate to them a story so that they can arrive at that conclusion themselves as well. Okay, so right now, the issue is you're coming from the angle of the expert or the teacher, okay? Which is like in parenting. What do parents do? Parents always come from an angle of, I'm the parent. When the kid says, Mom, Dad, why do I have to do this? Because I'm the parent, you listen to me, right? And that's what most parents do. But I'm guessing, right, without being a parent, much more effective way of being a parent would be to try to get your kid to arrive at the conclusion themselves rather than telling them, right, dictatorship mode in the household, right? So the question is, as a trainer, as the marketer, what can we be doing? So it could be one angle if it is about courses. If you're to ask the questions, it would be, so I'd like you to think about all of the top authors and thought leaders and experts that you follow, like, and respect in whatever market. Just think about that for a second, okay? Whether it's in real estate, whether it's in fitness, whether it's in relationships, whether it's advice about money, any market, okay? Just think about 3 people that you know, like, and follow. And chances are you bought that product and you like that person today because of that. And that had nothing to do with their branding or their positioning or how many followers they had on Facebook or the university that they graduated from. But at the same time, I'd like you to think about this next question. What do you think most people, when you want to start a course, think about when they're starting out? What do you think stops most people before they begin creating a course? In fact, what is stopping you from creating your first course? Most people would say, well, but nobody knows me, but I'm not qualified, but I'm not a celebrity, but I don't have that piece of paper from college that certifies that I'm an expert in this, right? Wouldn't you agree? Fear of failing, right? What if, but who am I to be able to do this? But at the same time, think about all those names that you just listed. You just told me that the reason why you know, like, and trust them had nothing to do with their qualification or whether they had a piece of paper or whether they were certified from this specific institution. So isn't that crazy that this thing right now is stopping you, but yet at the same time, all the top thought leaders and experts that you know, like, and trust, you didn't base that decision on whether they had that piece of paper or whether they were qualified. You just liked them because you consumed the content at the right time, at the right place, and because it helped you and because it was engaging to you. That's why you know, like, and trust them. Now, what if I told you that that's you right now, where you're starting out, and why would somebody buy your course? They will buy your course because you had the right offer at the right time, at the right place. Not because you're an expert, not because you have a piece of paper, not because you would need to graduate from this Ivy League university in order to get a person to know, like, and trust you. There's somebody else in life right now that has that similar problem or obstacle. And right now to them, they don't know how to solve it. So the question I'd like you to think about is, what if you could be that person for them? You had a problem, you solved it, and to you it seems second nature. But right now there's somebody else who has the similar problem that wants to be able to solve this as well, and you figure it out. So wouldn't you agree that it would be your moral obligation to be able to create this solution to a problem so that you'll be able to help more people? That you would be doing them a disservice if this course or this solution to a problem did not exist. There's educational content versus transformational content. Let me give you an example. Let's take fitness. example of educational content would be you need to be able to work out high intensity, short sessions each day and to be consistent at it every single day, because that's going to help you eventually get your weight loss goal. So what I said in that statement was purely educational. Now, chances are you going to do it because I said that thing that is true and educational? For most people, 99.9999% of the time, they're not going to do it just because it was educational, just because it was factual, just because it makes sense, just because it's logical. And you see, what stops most people from creating a course is they think it needs to be educational, when in fact, educational truly doesn't create change. Now, what's transformational? Transformational would be if you were thinking about working out and you were lazy, and because you didn't do it, I got you on a phone and I screamed at your face and I gave you tough love and told you what you didn't necessarily want to hear, but eventually you did that workout. Now that would be something that creates change. It's transformation. And notice that transformation would happen not because I gave out educational content, but because I would have the right intention, and because I started off with understanding what truly gets a person to take action. So you could be wondering, well, so what does this have to do with courses? Well, the conclusion is, what if what creates a great course, it's not educational content, but transformational content? And creating transformational content is something each and every one of you already have. You already understand what it is that would make a person take action. Why? Because chances are, if you have gone through that problem, that struggle, that obstacle, you would know what it takes, whether it's their motivations, their mindset, it's their attitude, it's their environment. These are things that would help a person create real change and not just the steps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So you're giving them the difference between educational and transformational, and at the same time, you're helping to overcome the objections.
Yes. And that is what you need to be doing in your pitch. Okay, now this is just one. The one objection over here is, but I'm not qualified to be selling a course. So what you need to do now in order to sell this well, and that's why 22 minutes is not enough, is you got to list down everything, every obstacle that is stopping a person from wanting to do this. So that's just internal. You got to think about what's the external. External is, well, what if I created this course that you're asking me to do and nobody buys it? Okay, Kate, makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Right, so you're welcome, Kate. Well, I hope you enjoyed the behind the scenes to this coaching call. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments below what your biggest takeaway is. And as always, be sure to smash the like button. It does help the channel out a little bit. And to subscribe to this channel if you want to be notified of future videos just like this one. Now, some of you asking me, how can I be part of this process? How can I ask you questions? How can I have you coach me or mentor me? We want to make sure that we are working with the people that's the right fit. You'll need to fill up a form. There's a link right below this video. Somebody on my team might give you a call to interview you to see if they're right fit for each other. And if you want to apply and see if you're a good fit, then all you need to do is click on this link in the description box below and my team will be in touch with you.